All right, today we're going to look at the letter C. I started off doing this research thinking there are not that many variations that are possible, but after sitting down and doing a little bit of flourishing practice, I realized that I was very wrong. I'm going to use a Hunt 22B today. The letter A's were done with a manuscript pen company principle. The letter B's were done with a Gillot or Gillot 303 made by the William Mitchell Pen Company. And then this is a Hunt 22B, which is made by the Speedball Company. So to start with, I'm going to put one letter down and leave it because I will come back to it at the end of it, and I really need it to be dry in order to do the last version. So just give me a second, let me put this down. Hi, so I've done it a little bit wide, and you'll see when I come back to it why I've done it that way. The thing about the letter C is it looks simple, but as with all the letters, you just need to know how you're starting with the basic stroke and then how you're moving on to the flourish. So the principal thing about the letter C is to remember that the leading oval can either be flat at a little bit of a diagonal, and then almost at the same angle of the letter itself. So let's start with the variations. So the variations go based on the sort of final part of the stroke. So I'll try and separate them with a little interpunct. So we have 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. Notice they're all in line with the axis of the stroke, and they split the oval in half, almost approximately. Then we have obviously getting more complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We can make this another variation by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So that this is parallel to that outer curve of the C. Next, we'll change the lead-in stroke. So instead of doing this simple oval, we'll do the oval and extend it up and over and out. So here we have a historical C. And another version is to do it this way. Next is to change the lead-in stroke. So instead of having an oval, we're going to start at the baseline. We're going to start at the baseline and move up from the baseline. So we go, one second. So we go from here up to the top, very tight curve, and there. Now, you can then go by omitting the lead-in stroke. And then, of course, based on what we've done up here on the variations of the exit stroke, we can then move to the next version where the lead-in stroke is actually curved. Now this is where you really need to start thinking about the shape of the letter. You can also make this lead-in stroke a little bit more, a little bit longer and more playful. Now, the way in which the stroke is constructed, this little dollop is constructed, can also affect how the change in direction works. So Bill Hildebrand called this a, you can either make it as a loop. So let's look at the loop. So we have this. Or as Bill would call it, a cusp. So instead of making the loop, instead of finishing the loop, you actually just make a point to change the direction. And then we move to other strokes where we change the base again, as in here. Typical historical C, based on a French ronde. And then same shape, but again, using that lead out flourish. Now, these are the two strokes. We have to plan them a little bit better because we need to leave some space because we're moving back this way. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have a version of this with the letter A as well as the B. And then the other one is a little bit more complicated. Next, we move on to slightly more complex letters. Let's see, right. So we have a really complex lead-in stroke. And if you're going to flourish, you might as well do the whole thing. And then we have another version of this. Sorry. So we see a ton of parallel shapes. And then, of course, we have the wonderful double stroke, which, as I mentioned, with the A and the B, you need to leave enough space to come back and add these double strokes in. The next thing we can look at is where the ball of the C is in relation to the text that you're writing. This is very typical of 18th and 19th century charters and bills. So we have a C that does this, and the rest, and the text would fit in here. And if you're really skilled, you can join them up. Or another variation in the same document. And now getting back to that first C, I'm going to invert the piece of paper because I need to get to the letter here. So this is not a historical variation. This is something that I just came up with. And we need a side flourish. Okay. And there are the C's. Thank you.